Coming up, what the media isn't telling you about birthright citizenship. Welcome to Just Facts News, where we bring you thoroughly vetted facts that other newscasts have ignored or distorted. In a recent episode of ABC World News Tonight, anchor David Muir reported.
Tonight, one of the president's executive orders is on hold, a federal judge indefinitely blocking his attempt to end birthright citizenship. The judge ruling that the president's executive order barring citizenship to children born to undocumented or temporary immigrants, quote, conflicts with the plain language of the 14th Amendment.
Here's what ABC News and a host of other media outlets that covered this story failed to tell you. The plain language of the 14th Amendment is at odds with this judge's ruling, and it is consistent with Trump's executive order. The 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Supporters of wholesale birthright citizenship say that the term subject to the jurisdiction means everyone who was born on U.S. soil, or everyone within the jurisdiction of the United States. However, this claim is at odds with the actual words of the 14th Amendment, which uses the phrase within its jurisdiction for a different purpose by preventing states from denying any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. In other words, the 14th Amendment uses the terms subject to the jurisdiction and within its jurisdiction for completely separate purposes. Thus, they clearly don't have the same meaning. Moreover, the U.S. Senator who co-authored the 14th Amendment and introduced it in the Senate, Republican Jacob Howard of Michigan, defined the phrase subject to the jurisdiction by stating, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers. The Senate then debated this language, and Howard explained that the word jurisdiction, as here employed, ought to be construed as to imply a full and complete jurisdiction on the part of the United States. That is to say, the same jurisdiction in extent and quality as applies to every citizen of the United States now. Certainly, gentlemen cannot contend that an Indian belonging to a tribe, although born within the limits of a state, is subject to this full and complete jurisdiction. As ratified, the Birthright Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment contains the exact words proposed by Howard. Hence, there can be little doubt that it means exactly what he said it means. Notably, the 14th Amendment doesn't prohibit Congress from granting citizenship to people not included in its Birthright Citizenship Clause. This occurred in 1924 when Congress passed a law that awarded U.S. citizenship to all non-citizen Indians born within the territorial limits of the United States. No such legislation has been passed for the children of illegal immigrants or tourists who are also being granted U.S. citizenship under a misconstrual of the 14th Amendment. In another ABC News broadcast, legal contributor Kim Whaley paraphrased the judge's ruling by stating,
it's crystal clear in the 14th Amendment and in binding Supreme Court precedent from 1898 when a Chinese person of parents were of Chinese descent born here was not allowed back in the country. And the Supreme Court said, no, if you're born here, it does not matter what the status of your parents are. You're still a citizen under the 14th Amendment. So this is about as settled law as it gets, Diane.
NBC, CNN, Politico, and the New York Times reported the same. Here's more of what these media outlets failed to tell you. The 1898 case involved a person born to immigrants who were legally and permanently living in the U.S. but weren't U.S. citizens. In this case, the Supreme Court ruled 6-2 that the child of these immigrants was a U.S. citizen because the 14th Amendment grants citizenship to all children here born of resident aliens, with limited exceptions like diplomats, occupying enemy forces, and the members of Indian tribes. This would seem to include illegal immigrants. However, the very same ruling also states that the phrase subject to the jurisdiction only applies to people who are permitted by the United States to reside here. This would seem to exclude illegal immigrants. Because this ruling was not about an illegal immigrant, any portion of it that concerns illegal immigrants is, in legal terminology, called dicta. As explained by a legal dictionary, dicta refers to statements made by a judge in a court opinion that are not essential to the decision of the case at hand, but are offered as guidance or commentary on the law. Dicta is not binding precedent and does not have the same legal authority as the holding of a case. In other words, the so-called binding Supreme Court precedent is not binding. Furthermore, it conflicts with itself. Another part of the judge's ruling, quoted by many media outlets, is that no court in the country has ever endorsed the president's interpretation. This court will not be the first. Here's more of what they failed to tell you. In the slaughterhouse cases of the 1870s, the Supreme Court ruled that the phrase subject to the jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment was intended to exclude from its operation subjects of foreign states born within the United States. That means illegal immigrants are excluded. This is also dicta, so it isn't binding. But the Supreme Court has in fact endorsed Trump's interpretation of the Birthright Citizenship Clause, contrary to what the media and the Biden-appointed judge who issued this ruling claims. Thank you for joining us. Tune in next time for more thoroughly vetted facts that other newscasts ignore or distort.